I don't know when in January you're going to be seeing this, but I still have my Christmas tree up. It was a good one this year. Be smart. Make a treacle tart. Treacle tart. Very English. Honestly, it's a sugar pie. We're gonna make a treacle tart using Lyle's golden syrup and sugar, basically. It's delicious. My mother and I used to love this when we lived in England. It was one of our favorite desserts. We would get it pre-made from Marks and Spencer. They have a frozen food section. They also had a delicious thing called the harvest pie, which is one of our favorite things to eat. Even though I don't really have a sweet tooth, I did like a treacle tart. So let's make one. The first thing we're gonna do is just make pastry. I'm actually gonna modify the recipe. I think we're using Mary Berry's. There's a million other recipes for it. We're gonna modify it slightly because I don't have the exact amount of syrup and I have a very small tart pan. So we're gonna see what happens. But first of all, we're going to make a crust. I know we've done this before, but it's fun. I'm just gonna get the flour. Here I am with 1.25 cups. I'm just gonna always tell you to do this. Make sure it's properly installed before you put the dry ingredients in. I know one of you guys gave us a great tip about putting your finger in the hole. So I go like this, to the west, no, to the west, to the east? Because I'm in New York City, it's hard to say, because I have a bad sense of direction. It's a sign of genius. Anyway, when they crown the queen, or the king in this case, coming up, they make them go to the four corners, kind of like a huppah in a Jewish wedding. I'm using the good salt. You don't really need to use your good salt. Sugar, I don't know, some sugar. A tablespoon, a little bit. It's called a pâte sucre, sweet crust. I'm just gonna quickly pulse this. Okay, now I'm gonna take, the ghost of the flour. Now I'm gonna take the frozen butter. It's not gonna be completely frozen, but it's a good trick and I'll show you. Butter. That's Miss Joni shaking out. The good news is, Mrs. Maud is fully recovered from her neck injury. Of course, we don't know how strong the scar tissue is, but she's fully recovered movement, which is fantastic. However, concurrent to that wonderful experience over Christmas, we also found out that, bizarrely, Joan has heartworm, which, as some of you know, is very, very serious. Now, whether it was part of her original shelter infection or there was a new infection, we'll never know. My suspicion is the original infection was never fully cured, and I stopped giving her the preventative, which is called HeartGard. I give them HeartGard. I strongly urge you to not stop giving your dog HeartGard, no matter where you live, but especially if you live in the southern states where heartworm is very prevalent. HeartGard is much less expensive than heartworm treatment, which takes about 4 months. Give your dog the preventative. Okay, here we go. Almost frozen butter. I'm cutting this in half. If it's a stick of butter, just make small cubes is what you're trying to do. So I'm gonna go like this, like this, like this. So I'm now going to put the butter in here and I'm gonna sprinkle it around. Now let's really think about this. West.
So in actuality, yes.
Yeah, okay, west. Now Reggie got the compass out. So we're gonna go like this, to the north, to the south, to the west, to the east. Don't put it all in one clump. That's what I'm trying to show you, convolutedly. This is always a miracle to me. I honestly, blows my mind every time I do it. What you want is small little pea-sized pieces of butter. Pulse it, pulse it, pulse it. Feel those pulsing pulses. Pulse it. I like the look of that. Yeah, that's good. My friend Michael got chickens. So pretty soon we're gonna have Birnbaum eggs. Apparently they are so unafraid of his humongous dogs that they play with them. And Danny, their huge pit bull mix, is terrified of the chickens. They come right up to the door of the house, and they have a huge house with an enclosure and a heater and everything, but I can't wait to get those eggs. I'm just homogenizing this egg, and then I'm gonna pour it from the north around in a circle. I have a really bad sense of direction. Everybody who knows me knows that. It's a sign of genius. All geniuses have a bad sense of direction. I'm gonna pulse this real quick. And you can see it's already wanting to make pastry. Here comes the miracle. I'm gonna just pour this through the thing while it's running. And I'm gonna observe it. So less water as opposed to dumping water. How much water? Only you know. Oh, what's happening? Something strange and unusual. Up. Miracle. I like that texture. I'm just gonna run it a couple more seconds. It's a tiny bit wet, so you know what you can do? Add flour. Just a little bit like that, and then just run it for a few more seconds. Now this should chill overnight or for at least an hour. Now it's perfect. So take a piece of saran wrap. This is the most mysterious saran wrap thing I've ever had. Cuts me repeatedly. Obviously, I opened the box wrong, but there's no like sticky thing here. Every time I do it, I have to find the opening. Help. Now you want it to have a nice rest, so you should make it look nice while it's resting, because you know it wants to look nice. There's our dough. Okay. You want to put this into a circle because you're going to roll it into a circle. And I'm going to show you a little trick. Make it nice. Now, when you put the saran wrap, go to the little crevices and cracks and smooth them out through the saran wrap, like this. I'm just going to sort of make it rounder, smooth it out, flip it. I'm going to do the same thing over here, right? If you see a fissure, kind of rub the fissure out. Okay, this little guy goes in the fridge for an hour. Don't ask me. To let the gluten strand, I don't know what it is, but they want you to put it in the fridge. Goodbye, little dough. Have a good time in the fridge. This has been resting. It's a little bit hard, but it should roll out well. I'm gonna put a tiny bit of flour. Remember the dinner party tonight and basic cooking rule. Don't put too much flour on your surface because you don't want to have huge wads of raw flour in your pastry. Here's our pastry. Oh, the bottom came out. How about this? Remember that when you take it out of the oven so you don't do that with your bottom fingers. Remember, it has a removable bottom. I've done that numerous times. Okay, I'm just gonna give this a very, very super light spray before we start. Ever bake, baby. This is just a little reassurance that a tart will pop out. Here we go. Dough-mania. I have too much dough for that, which is kind of awesome. And I halved my dough recipe. So I did good. Okay, here we go. So you always want to pick it up and move it. Don't roll it out in a stationary position. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Flip if you want. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. But just keep this moving. You don't want it to be too stuck on its surface. I'm reading an interesting book about animal senses called An Immense World. It's very, very fascinating. And he talks about dogs' sense of smell and, how it's just really interesting. And sight, and how we are basically, sight is our main sense, human beings. And when we take dogs on walks and we don't let them sniff, we're actually forcing them to live in a world that they don't understand. They're not purely visual. Some walks have to be, we're getting to a location. And some walks have to be where they're allowed to sniff. This is nice pastry I made. It becomes more malleable and more fragile also. Very nice piece of pastry I've made. Very proud. Very proud indeed. Treacle tart is like, I don't know how to explain it. It's a very common thing in England. Like if you went to get a coffee, it might, like a lemon square, it would also be on the menu of the cafe. Look at this professional grade pastry here. Dude, this is really nice. Okay, now I'm being super careful. I'm also feeling it to make sure I'm not making one piece thicker. So I'm kind of trying to be really even now. This is quite thick on the edge here, but I don't know if I need that. Let me see. We're in business. Okay, here's your pastry, and we're about to do the hardest part, which is putting it in the pan. All right, I'm gonna take my little pan here, and I'm gonna cut a circle. I'm secretly really good at math. Not on the surface, but deep inside. I'm gonna cut it obviously wider so that I can go up the sides, right? I was part of the generation where girls weren't really taught math. We were taught math, but if you weren't good at it, they just let you go. And that's kind of what happened to me. I'm secretly quite mathematical. So I'm draping it over my arm briefly. And now I'm just gonna, this is like the best pastry I've ever made in my life. Now I'm sort of lifting it and dropping it. Lift and drop. Try not to tug on it. I don't know, is that like perfect or what? So now that it's sitting on the bottom, I'm going to press in the grooves in Pooty Poo so you can see the pretty design. And then this is gonna go back in the fridge to sort of set up while we make the filling. I'm not gonna trim this until it's chilled a little bit. So here we go, I'm just making sure there's no air bubbles in the bottom. Perhaps I'll use my pastry roller, a gift from Brian Barnard. Oh, wow. Remember when we were using the paper? Brian noticed on the show that I was using the paper to smooth out something we made. And he got me this pastry roller. Okay, I'm just gonna put this in the fridge, basically, and then we're gonna make the filling, okay? Remember, the bottom is loose. It would be smart to have this on a tray, actually, but it's okay. You know, I've never made this, which is, we like to do that together sometimes. The filling is mysterious. Mary Berry, who of course we trust, she doesn't use an egg. Everybody else uses an egg, and one uses 4 eggs. So we're gonna use 1 egg. Basically, the recipe is Lyle's golden syrup thickened with breadcrumbs. We could do that, which is Mary Berry, or we could add 1 little egg, which I think we're gonna do. Could wreck it, I don't know. It's basically this whole thing. Excuse me. Mr. Lee, the famous Mr. Lee, had this all Christmas. And I went there last night to buy an extra bottle because we actually don't have enough, which is fine. And he goes, Kim, who's the night guy, he goes, I just sold the last bottle. I'm like, great. It's a weird thing for a bodega to have. It's kind of cool that they carried this. Okay, I'm gonna put the zest of a heartily washed lemon. I bought an apple yesterday, and the guy, he literally picked his nose when he was scanning it on the thing. Wash your fruit. I'm putting some lemon zest in here because it's fatally sweet. And I'm going to put a little teeny bit of the juice, but only a little teensy weensy bitty poo. All right, here we go. 1 egg, I don't know. I'm going to mix this together. I have a feeling the egg is right. All right, and now I'm just going to thicken this with the idea in my head that it's going to be cuttable when it's cooked, okay? So these are breadcrumbs from Fico's, which Lynn very kindly got because I forgot to buy them. I'm going to put a little bit more breadcrumbs. It's about 3/4 of a cup. I'm now going to blind bake the tart. So I'm going to remove the tart from the fridge. Remember, the bottom is not attached. I'm going to trim it. Too big. Too clumsy. Just use a Perusi if you ever have any questions about what knife to use. The rule is just use a Perusi. Dan, am I saying the name of your company wrong? Can you please help me out here? I'm just trimming this and I'm kind of shocked at how perfect this is. Just do this without fear. Don't be like, oh, like this. Just make big cuts and just press on the top. Press and move, okay? That is sort of the best pastry thing I've ever made. Piercing the bottom. Okay, these are just ceramic beads. They're really just a weight. If you have any kind of weight, you can just use that. I'm just going to blind bake this for about 10 minutes, and I am going to put it on a tray so we don't have to fuss with it again. Voila. Into the oven. Come on, little pie. Don't cry. It's going to be all right. Ooh, that's hot. That's a hot oven. I'm presuming it's 350. So I made a rookie mistake, which is I trimmed the pastry before the blind bake, which is kind of a rookie error, actually. You're supposed to trim it after the blind bake. But anyways, now here's a good question. How do you get this out? Ow. Nuclear. Burning. You should really wait until it cools. But we're shooting a show here. Okay, so you can see definitive shrinkage, as George Costanza said. I'm now simply going to pour this in, and then we're going to bake it until the pastry is brown. Looks like treacle tart. I'll give you that. Ooh, this pan's hot. Woo! Woo-hoo! Looks like treacle tart to me. I'm going to just pop some of these little bubbles. Okay, back into a 375 oven until the pastry is quite brown, you know. I don't know what's going to happen to the filling. It's a mystery, but we'll see. Wow, this is really hot. I'm taking it to the oven. Come on, little pie. I don't know. Could be really good, in which case it's super easy. So here's our tart. Here's our little tray. If you have whipped cream, you're serving it with whipped cream, something to stick the tart so it doesn't move when people cut it is always a good idea. But just let's take a look at our little tart, shall we? I like my 80s bangles, you know? No soggy bottom. Treacle tart. Take a peekle at my treacle. No, to the west, to the east. Because I'm in New York City, it's hard to say because I have a bad sense of direction. It's a sign of genius.